it out.
All right, we've got Karate Dom against Juju Bean, both very, very well-known names in the Magic Online community. And on the bottom side here, I see a Blood Crypt. I see a Fury and a Malakir Rebirth. We got Red Rakdos Scam coming up, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we be scamming. Up against Murktide, it looks like, well, there's a Sacred Foundry there, so maybe let me check on the list here.
Oh, it's got to be Breach. I'm 100% sure.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
looks like might be some Jeskai control even. Gotta love it.
I might just step in here. I think it is Jeskai Breach. I remember seeing a tweet from Juju saying that they placed in the Manatraders leaderboard playing Jeskai Breach. They went 17, no, maybe 19-1. So they did really, really well with the deck. Definitely showcasing some mastery core, giving you a run for your money here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the younger players, one of the maybe Zoomer category as far as gamers go. Great player. Doesn't matter what kind of deck they're going to be playing. I'll always consider them a tough opponent.
Yeah. Oh, and check it out here. So Spell Pierce that pick up, Dragon's Rage Channel are now in play. And then on the other side, we see a copy of Blood Moon and Fury. So this could be pretty a pretty spicy turn here. We'll have to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And then with Blood Moon as well to kind of shut things off from there. Tricky stuff.
Now, in this case, I guess you do have a question, which is, are you going to try to feign Death the Fury to get the 4/4 double striker? Or are you going to try to
Season Pyromancer or something like that? Yeah, I like not risking it here because it's just so vulnerable to a Lightning Bolt or an Unholy Heat with Delirium. Doesn't look like we have Delirium, but yeah, a nice play here to just go from Pyromancer.
Oh no, this is interesting. I actually didn't even see this, but the Blood Moon got exiled to the Fury when casting it for the alt cost, and Feign Death just going to get binned by the Season Pyromancer. So this just means that Dom is saying, hey, this is not a matchup for the combo because you've got too much interaction. I'm just going to get rid of everything here. Wow.
Yeah, just kill everything. And yeah, I mean, right now, the hand is not great for our Grief gamer here.
On the other hand, though, there's the Delirious Dragon's Rage channel coming into play off the Expressive Iteration. And I gotta say, Juju making this deck look pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't have any of the combo pieces yet.
But a stocked graveyard is pretty good. I've seen you might have noticed one guy plays Fair Breach at that one event and drew like 5 or 6 cards off of Mishra's Bauble. It was streamed on Twitch.tv somewhere. I don't know. It was God, bad joke. Sorry.
Impressive.
Now,
impressive. And there is Giganta coming in.
Oh wow. Okay, that's actually really cool. Giganta seems pretty hard for the black-red deck to handle, but Fury going to come into play now, and the board state looks actually very favored here for Dom, and given that Juju is unfortunately flooding, it looks like there may be a very good chance here for Dom to actually steal this game in classic Rakdos Scam fashion.
Yep. Absolutely. So yeah, now I am looking at Juju Bean's list here, and this is the Jeskai Fair Breach, so we're not grinding station. This is a list that I've been playing a decent amount as well, and I think this deck is extremely strong. You're just really playing, you truly are Jeskai control for the most part, and then all of a sudden when you're just up to 7 mana, you just go Breach and bolt you 4 times, and that's the new combo. So this is the deck that I would be playing right now. There are certain things that I want to experiment with, again, to make sure that this deck is still where I want to be, but a really powerful strategy at kind of that mix between Jeskai, Grinding Station, Breach, which of course is a faster, more dangerous combo deck, and also a mix between Murktide, which is the completely on the fair side. You get that little middle ground where you can have a little bit of a combo finish, but then can also still do some Murktide stuff and gain access to some of the powerful white cards like Wear Tear, which I'm really high on right now.
Yeah, like when I played Breach recently, Wear Tear was definitely one of the cards that looked really good here. But speaking of looking really good, wow. Okay, Dom is just all over the board here. You know, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, the Elemental Token, Juju at 5. This is a pretty scary clock, and the Giganta just got taken care of by a Lightning Bolt after it blocked Ragavan here. And actually,
Oof.
that might just be lethal. Top decking this Ragavan here.
Yeah, that was excellent. Nice draw there. And yeah, a breach or something like that would have been amazing, but Rakdos Scam does not give you much time. So yeah, looks like Dom picking up game number 1. And yeah, Dom's a great player too. Played him in the finals of the last SCG Invitational. You know, I didn't even know a ton about him since then. And then after that, he's tearing up the NRG series. You know, he's absolutely incredible online as well. So a very scary opponent for sure.
Yeah, I want to ask you some questions about sideboarding. It helps that we have the resident breach expert in the broadcast when we're watching the first breach match of the weekend. How would you sideboard against a matchup like Rakdos Scam? What does the Rakdos Scam matchup even look like? How does it feel when you're playing against it? What are you worried about?
You don't sideboard a ton here. Basically, the whole thing is you want to just max out on removals. So there's some Aether Gust that you probably want to add. They're not amazing, but Dom's really all the cards you really want. It seems to be in the main deck. You know, you want as many Unholy Heats as possible. You want all your Lightning Bolts. You want to get out some of your not so great cards like Spell Snares. But yeah, I'd just be bringing in Gus, maybe some Unlicensed Hearse. But really, Dom does not have a huge sideboard for this matchup. Pretty much just has to send back and get Spell Snare out. I think that's the main thing.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So then perhaps if we don't really have the cards that will articulate a victory for us, we're looking for maybe like an adaptive play style. Like how do the early turns have to play out here? As both player hands cams are available now, so we get a good glimpse of what's going on here with some shredders and the critical breach that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always starts off, you know, number 1, do you have to deal with that scam-ish combo, the grief or fury into bringing it back? If that's not there, and it does look like Juju Bean's hand is just pretty stocked. It was pretty ready for the grief, kind of ephemerate trick, fraying death, anything like that. But just trying to get your threats out and try to make sure you contain the scammed creatures as much as you can.
Okay, well, turn 2 Ledger Shredder here from Juju going to get bolted out of this plane, and we see Dothy Voidwalker coming into play, which is fascinating because in the hand here for the Rakdos side, you also have a Ragavan that you could have dashed. So, what's the left or the right behind this?
Yeah, that is interesting to me because you really do think you want to connect with Ragavan because if you ever get that free spell, you know, you're pretty excited about that. And Dothy does die to a ton of stuff. So that was interesting to me. I think I probably would have dashed Ragavan, but it is close.
Okay, kind of interesting here because so the good news about Dothy is that it does act as you know, it's got that graveyard hate baked into it, which makes it really nice. I suppose that's going to factor into various calculations when you're thinking about Dragon Series Channeler and Underworld Breach and then Delirium and this and that. Does come into the red zone here, tap sideways, and we take the damage. Okay.
Yeah, looking to just make sure and not get Blood Moons. I think that is the number one thing that Juju Bean is looking to avoid. Head to end step and then start dealing with some stuff. I wouldn't be too shocked to see Flooded Strand go get an island as well, just to insulate from that problem.
So Blood Moon is definitely one of the cards. Are there any other cards that you would have on your radar from the Jeskai side of things that you want to play around?
Number 1 being Blood Moon, because Blood Moon isn't amazing against this style of Jeskai Breach deck, because this is another one that is very red focused, where you can just breach, bring back a bunch of bolts and stuff, but you have to turn your graveyard online for that first. And we'll see. It's a tough spot here if you want to. Yeah, this does look like Juju Bean playing around Fraying Death, any kind of bring stuff back card that matters, because if you were to aim your only Unholy Heat at Dothy and then it gets brought back right away, it's gonna be pretty rough here. So Aether Gust more than likely sending that to the bottom, but we shall see.
All right. Well, Unholy Heat, Ledger Shredder in the hand here for Juju Bean on the other side. Grief and Terminate, and what might be another copy of Ragavan, which is kind of a stacked hand here. I mean, at some point you could just hard cast the Grief, which is far better than doing any sort of combo shenanigans. And actually, I have a question for you, Corey.
Mhm.
Based on the way Game 1 was played out, the Seasoned Pyromancer discarding the Feigned Death after Fury was evoked, not doing any sort of combo shenanigans. Do you think that maybe Dom is on that next level train here, having sided out more copies of Feigned Death and Undying Evil and whatnot?
Maybe that is definitely a possibility. I feel like if you're taking that stuff out, you're just really trying to be a kind of weak mid-range deck. Where I think that is just good against red removal. So I would take out a ton, but I would definitely consider trimming a few here and there.
Very fascinating. All right, well, Ragavan going to get dashed into play now. Fortunately, Juju was able to top deck the Lightning Bolt, so I think we're going to see ends meet here. Yep. 3 damage to the monkey. And what's the follow-up play? Nothing here. Just kidding. Dothy Voidwalker.
And has the Dothy, but yeah, as it stands right now, Juju Bean's not looking great unless he top decked a removal spell. That would have been insane. Consider still pretty strong, but Voidwalker is one of those cards that just has to be dealt with. And when Breach is your one way to deal with it eventually, ends up not being great. So these kind of situations are definitely ones that favor Rakdos Scam. And this matchup is just another one that's just very close.
Yeah. I think a lot of people may normally look at, the Jeskai Fair Breach deck and be like, oh yeah, Murktide Regent is better than Underworld Breach because that's one of the defining elements that separates it from Murktide. But I'm just going to analyze situations as they come at us. In this situation, Murktide would have been not as good as Breach. I mean, maybe
Breach
that's
looks
just
bad too. They both look bad right here, to be honest. But on Breach from the other side, that's interesting. Oh, never mind. That was whenever you take a peek at your opponent's hand, it kind of briefly pops up in that hand
okay.
cam. I was like, oh, we're siding in Breach in this Rakdos scam list. I was like, count me in. There ends up being a really nice pickup, but an uncastable one because of the way that Juju Bean ended up fetching up lands, which I totally agree with at the time. You were playing around Blood Moon. You're making sure that was not something that could be dealt with. But instead, you just end up drawing the Teferi, and it ends up being uncastable, and it's quite awkward here.
Finding Lightning Bolt, though, for the Dothy Voidwalker is the first step. Underworld Breach, unfortunately, is exiled to the Grief, but you're still in this game now, a little bit lower in the life total, but you do have Teferi potentially, and on the other side, just a Thoughtseize and a Blood Crypt.
Yeah, and there goes Teferi, so we're going to have that true top deck war here.
Perfect. Just how I like it.
Absolutely. Expressive Iteration probably being the number one draw that Juju Bean would want to be seeing.
And in the meantime, otherwise, we'll just continue turning sideways. Grief does have Menace, so it is hard to block. You cannot just sit back with the Ledger Shredder and do nothing. And oh my goodness, Nile Spellbomb.
That was a great draw here. There's a lot of decks that are really caring about the graveyard here at the top. These Jeskai Fair Breach decks, these Jeskai Combo Breach, Murktide cares. I mean, a lot of graveyard matters. And now Spellbomb, a card that we haven't seen a ton of, but looking great here.
All right. Juju going to draw Aether Gust for the turn. Oh, and a copy of Scalding Tarn. Okay. Now, unfortunately, none of these are going to handle the Grief that is in play right now. So we'll have to calculate a plan for how to handle this Elemental.
Yeah, and that's the tough part. Is Aether Gust is not an amazing card against this deck, but looking at the sideboard, there was just not a lot of good options.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if it was a Spell Snare, right? It would have just been significantly worse.
True, very true, very true. But I mean, that's where if you want to sideboard cards that are really good in this matchup, Celestial Purge or something is something that you would want to aim if you're specifically targeting this matchup. But most of the time, this isn't like the only matchup you want to be targeting. Modern's so diverse that Aether Gust ends up coming in against a lot more matchups than something like Celestial Purge would be one of these more narrow sideboard cards that you would want for this matchup.
All right, well, Gigantha added to the hand here. Seasoned Pyromancer. Oh, this is the second copy of Grief. That's the top deck here for Dom. most likely drawn off with an IO Spellbomb activation. And now things are looking very, very, very grim here for the Jeskai side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And one draw to deal with that. And no, that goes a nice 2-0 here to Dom. Taking it down, going to 2-0 here with Rack.